Ooh, 83.
Okay, I think the live stream and everything is running now. So if you're ready, Stephen, I'll start the recording and introduce you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Seems like the live stream has, yeah, there we go, the recordings.
Okay, yeah, everything's ready. So hello again, everybody. It's May the 19th of the world, still, I guess, and we're on the final day of the 6th Virtual Roundtable Conference. This is a second plenary for today as part of the Asian Symposium. This session is being recorded, so if you consent to being in the recording, please type yes in the chat box. And if you don't, the recording is available later. It will all be archived and put onto the website. Okay, so today's second session is with Steven Herder, and I'll just introduce him now. Steven has been teaching within the Japanese EFL context since 1989. Having over 20 years teaching experience at the elementary and secondary school level, currently an assistant professor in the International Studies Department at Doshisha Women's College of Liberal Arts. He is also extremely active in professional development within the ELT community. He co-founded MASH Collaboration 2007, an online community devoted to professional development through collaboration. He is an avid user of Skype and can often be heard saying, "Collaboration creates just the right amount of tension to get lots done." He also spends time editing numerous articles, academic volumes, and proceedings, and leading teacher training seminars for various companies throughout Japan. Steven works from the perspective that being a teacher means a never-ending commitment to learning. So I'll now hand the microphone over to Steven, and looking forward to the session.
Okay, thank you very much, Dave. And to make sure that everybody's hearing me okay, I'm in a bit of a vacuum here because I don't hear anything, but that's okay. I've been living in Japan for 24 years and I don't read anything, so that's okay. Thanks, Anne. I'm just curious if some of you can type the city or country you're in and what time it is there. In my case, okay, so yeah, I'm not having any coffee anymore. I had a couple this morning. Oh, we got lots of Europeans. Lovely. Well, as Barb said, and as Heike and Dave said, this session is somewhat focused on the Asian context. And as Barb mentioned earlier, one of the problems with many of our best teachers who want to share some of their stories is that the bandwidth has not caught up yet. And so I will be discussing experiences being in Japan here since 1989. And we've also got, we've got a good friend, Syke, from India, who has a very, very interesting things to tell us about the Indian context. I hope to get over there within the next year as well. Thanks for telling me where you are and what time it is there. I wanted to say I wrote down a couple of notes while listening to Barb. It's the first time I've seen that presentation by Barb, and it's very, very powerful. Thank you, Barb, a lot. I also want to say thank you to Heike and the other organizers of this virtual roundtable, as well as the moderators who are volunteering their time, and all of the presenters. The sessions that I've sat in were wonderful. They were beautiful to look at. They were technologically challenging in some cases. Great ideas. And as Barb also said, I think I'm going to end up saying as Barb said many times in this session, because so many of the things she said are still bouncing around inside my head. So I did write down that I am such a product of everything that Barb was talking about. I'm a very talkative person by nature, but I was very much a very shy teacher for many, many years who would not dare to stand up in front of people and tell them what I thought. And so it's wonderful that we're all in this together, and that when we get to the point, and I'm very definitely at the point where I love talking about the classroom, I love talking about teaching, and I feel so lucky to have 20 people in the room now to share some of these ideas. So I'm predominantly here speaking as a teacher today, and my goal is that I want to make an argument that yes, we're all busy, but sometimes there's value in stopping and looking back at the journey, at the teacher's journey that we are on, and reflecting about what we've learned and the decisions that we've made to come to be the teachers, a work of art in progress. We never stop learning, as again Barb mentioned earlier. But arguing that even though we're busy, it's very worth it to stop and look at where you've come from and where you're going. I've been doing that more and more. I'm in my 24th year now, I guess, of teaching here in Japan, and I'm doing more and more reflect activities with my students. Okay, we're going to move, getting in the flow here. So just so you know, I have sections to this presentation, and I've chosen the teacher's journey. I've chosen a theme of pretty roads. So I've looked through the internet and collected a number of pictures of beautiful scenes from all around the world that are connected to roads and the journey that we're on. So please sit back and enjoy the pictures if that's all you get out of it for now. I have 31 slides, and you can, I guess you can see once we get in, you can see the numbers on the slides, I believe. So we're going to go on, here we go. Yeah. So in the first section, I'm going to look at defining my beliefs, and I was actually forced into doing that. I never thought about doing that. Second part of the presentation will be on collaborating online as professional development, very much in tune with the virtual roundtable. It's really changed my teaching life completely. And number 3 is finding my own niche, my own special area within ELT that I can focus on and try to become an expert on, and try to find other people to share ideas with. So the other thing, just before I get going in full steam here, is that I really like to be interactive. And again, as we have such a small group, it would be wonderful for you to put in your comments. I have a bunch of questions prepared for you as well. Share your share ideas, and certainly feel free to ask for more information if I'm not clear, or ask for follow-up questions if you like. Okay. So I came to Japan in 1989, and in total, I've had 24 years in the Japanese classroom only. Of that, 20 years has been in junior high school and high school context. I spent 9 years doing 2 or 3 days a week at an elementary school, teaching a class of 20 students by myself. Pretty much it's always been 20 students per class. Usually in Japan there are 40 students, but we managed to convince them that teaching English to 40 students wasn't any more than babysitting. So you have to know where to draw the lines and where to make your battles. And one of my battles since day one has, if you keep my classes down to 20, then I can somehow keep track of almost all of them in the group. And currently I'm at a university, as Dave so eloquently pronounced, Doshisha, Women's College of Liberal Arts and in the International Studies Department. I actually have classes tomorrow. And I wonder who else has classes tomorrow? Who's the teacher's teacher spending their Sunday online in a workshop, in a session, and actually has classes tomorrow? Yeah. And tomorrow's my heavy day. Yes, I have 4 90-minute classes, and then I have a couple of classes when I get home at night. Yeah, so it's funny to be the people who get lots and lots done. So let's move on to the next slide. So in defining my beliefs, I started in a language school, and I soon moved on. I soon moved on to a high school interview, and I asked the principal directly in the interview, "What's a good teacher?" I'm strict, kind, and that was 24 years ago a very common thing I heard, that teachers were strict and kind. And I thought, well, yes, I can do that. I can figure that out. And that was about the only belief I started with. So when I started doing my MA, and my MA was, I started when I was 40, about 10 years ago. And one of the very first activities we had to do was write down what we believe about teaching, what we believe about learning. I want you to think about that for a little bit, because I'm going to ask you in a few minutes to dare type out some of your beliefs. We've done this in workshops before with people, and some people go blank. They go, put on the spot, I'm not sure exactly what I believe. But having to write about it was a wonderful experience for me to have to deal with. So I walked into the classroom. I'm going to be strict but kind. And I did that for about 10 years. The other thing the principal said to me was, don't worry about reading and writing. The Japanese teachers will take care of that, but please work on the students speaking and listening. So again, for about 10 years, my students didn't even need a pencil. They were speaking or listening. And I remember these poor little junior high school students who were walking into English for the first time in their lives, and me coaxing and cajoling and trying to get them to either speak or listen. And I used PPP, the PPP method, for many, many years. And I guess after a few years, once I started getting a sense of what actually was going on in the classroom, is when I started thinking, some nagging questions began and never seemed to go away. Questions like, how can they survive this lesson right now and appear to master it, and then next week come back and act as if they'd never heard anything we're talking about. If I tried to review something, how could they have forgotten everything in a week? And this was before I started my MA and looking into second language acquisition and finding out that, in fact, it's a much more complicated world than any of us think it should be when we're writing out our lesson plans. Okay. So I guess for about 10 years, I did what I was told, and I tried to become as good at it as possible. The next thing I believed, or I began to believe, was what people said to me. I started believing that people said I was a good teacher. And when I thought about it, nobody had ever been to my classroom. Nobody had ever come and given me feedback. Nobody had ever observed my lesson, or had never been evaluated. But yet I was believing that I was a good teacher based on the fact that I smiled a lot, and I came to work on time, and I dressed properly, and I was polite. I seemed to be working hard at my desk. Students, some liked me, I guess some didn't like me. So again, I was believing this perceived success of being a good teacher, but it dawned on me, am I being an effective teacher? And that really kind of shook me when I first read about the difference between being good and being effective. And as you see, and Ken Robinson has a wonderful talk on that just came out a couple of weeks ago, I guess, a new one. And again, being an effective teacher has to do with learning. Are students actually learning anything in my classes? And I spent, thank you, Anne. I spent many, many years believing I was good and trying to be good, and never really thinking about whether much learning was actually taking place in class. So, I'm going to move on here to a theory of learning, and that sometimes scares people as being some kind of, there's only one right answer, but there is no one answer, and I'd like to ask people, and it's kind of a difficult thing to do, but I'd like to ask you anyway, how do you think people learn a language? If you had to put that in one sentence, sorry, we got things jumping around here. Move back down. Yeah. How do you think people learn a language? Because however you think they learn a language, that's your theory of learning. And SLA, second language acquisition, is not black and white. It is gray. SLA is gray. That's the thing I learned after 3.5 years of doing the MA, is that I had to take more and more responsibility for what I believed worked based on the available knowledge in the literature, as well as based on my own experience and based on my observation of what was actually happening in the classroom. But I love these messages here through exposure and practice. Yeah, I agree. Listening. Yeah. Some people, we're just doing a placement test at my university, and we place them based on a holistic score of reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And we're finding out that maybe the listening is the most important of those 4 skills right now. And we'll know in July. We're going to compare the listening scores to actually the placement test scores and see if they line up differently. Connections, yes, Patrick. I have a slide coming up that has only the word connections on it. Needing it, yes. The motivation of actually needing to use the language, yeah. And again, depending. Thank you, Pete. Depends who they are, why they are learning, and what they want to learn. Yeah, the context, and communicating by using English. Valentina, yeah. Try it next time you're doing a speech or you're doing a workshop with teachers. Is give them 5 minutes and see what they come up with. and we've been surprised. Maybe level of teachers here at the virtual round are more experienced. Let me know. If I've been going 24 years, how long have you been teaching? Everybody? Yeah. Oh, Nadia, you're the baby. So far, anyway. Yeah. And I mean, there's this thing that talking about the 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. And I realized, I did a calculation based on that I was teaching, believe it or not, 1,000 hours a year, based on my contact hours, plus based on paying off student loans, trying to buy a house, working 6 or 7 days a week for many, many years. But I was teaching, 1,000 hours there, and something happened in my 20th year. Things changed. Things somehow became a lot easier. I lost track of when last time I had a truly horrible class, or when I completely lost it with a teenage student, or it was just something very palpable happened after my 20th year. Anyway, so that kind of defining what you believe to be the way people learn a language, calling that your theory of learning, and certainly what follows up right after that is your practice. And your theory of practice simply means deciding all of those activities that you're given to do, or that are in your textbooks, or that are expected of you, and deciding whether you think they fit into your own theory of how you want to teach your learners to learn what you think they need to learn. And I literally, personally speaking, I threw out all my textbooks in here, and I had, 10 different levels of classes, and I had this moment of, oh dear, what am I going to do? Because I had blank sheets in front of me and a couple of weeks to prepare. But it was a challenge that I made a commitment to, in an unplugged way, not really knowing what. But I certainly did know, and I had 15 years of experience at that point, and remembered what had worked well and what didn't work well. I had one great partner who I spoke with a lot, and so I wasn't just off the boat, walking in without a plan. I always walk in with too many plans, and always have too much to do. And anyway, it was a great challenge to not depend on the textbooks per se, but to define my own theory of practice based on that theory of learning. Okay. So I guess I would like to share with you a few of the points that form the basis of my theory of learning and my theory of practice. None of it is rock science, but it's stuff that I believe in to core of my teaching goal, and I'm happy to argue with anybody, and I'm happy to listen to other people's ideas, but this is what I take into the classroom. Here we go. My overreaching or overall one idea is a balanced approach. It doesn't matter if it's a reading, listening, or writing class. I've taught them all, and now I do a little bit of everything in the class to try to offer balance. Some of the reasons are that I think you can take the same, I'll show you in a moment, but I think you can take the same idea and talk about it, do a listening about it, read about it, write about it. And often the students don't know or don't notice that we are practicing the same point. They notice that we're doing 4 different activities, and if they're all interlinked, that's all they notice. So it took me a long time to come to this. And it took me, I used to feel guilty if I was doing writing in a listening class, because what if the writing teacher found out? But I tie it all together, and I find that it works the best for students, and the students enjoy my classes, and they're engaging and they're active, and I believe they're learning more by me taking an overall balanced approach between the 4 skills, reading, writing, listening, speaking, as well as grammar, fizz, and vocabulary development. So, here's one. I'll give you one example on this listening, speaking, writing, and reading, as I have 2 young children, boy and girl, and with the high school class, I often went on Monday mornings. I had it as a plan for a couple of lessons, and then students started asking for it. It was my weekend stories about the kids. So because I could tell stories for 10 minutes and totally lose it, I would take my iPhone, put on the mirror, and give them a 2-minute story. We would negotiate whether it was a very fast speed, regular, or slow speed. It kind of depended on the class. And then I would tell stories about my kids on the weekend. And so I would tell stories about my daughter. One comes right to mind. My daughter's struggles learning to ride the unicycle, and my son trying to learn how to do a whole bunch of different skipping activities that he had to do for school. So I would go on for 2 minutes straight. Students would furiously write notes. At the end of it, I would say, okay, now tell your friend, what did you catch? And then it became a speaking activity. And they would report back and forth. They would either first person, speaking as if they were me, and they were talking about their children, third person, and talk about Stephen's children, Ren and Sarah. After that, we'd say, okay, let's talk about what kind of toys or challenges you had when you were a kid, and you have 10 minutes to write about it. And so they would be all fired up now, because by the fact of listening to my stories about the unicycle and the skipping rope, then speaking about it, they were activating schema and ideas, and then I gave them 10 minutes to write about it, and that became a regular activity as well. At the end of 10 minutes of writing about it, they would switch papers and read each other's writing, and then do some follow-up questions. I would do some follow-up questions. So in that one little activity about children's weekend activities, they would have approached it in 4 different actual skills. And that became magic for me. I could do that, and I used to even write it up on the board. Okay, we identified listening and speaking, listening and reading as input. So they were getting input by listening to something or reading something. And we described speaking or writing as output. And so I would put up on the board that you need a balance of input and output. And you need a balance of skills. And I said balance many, many times. I said balance so many times, students started repeating it in their own reflective activities. And then I knew that it was taking hold a little bit. So that's the balanced approach. And then also another way to look at it is, Skian, is it Peter? Peter Skian writes about fluency, accuracy, and complexity in language learning. And complexity was never so much a concern at the high school. It certainly is now in my university context, but in high school, we pretty much tried to deal with a focus on accuracy and fluency. In the Japanese context, which is similar to what I know about many other contexts, there's still a focus on reading and writing and a grammar translation, I guess, for lack of a better word, a grammar translation approach. And that is almost, 100% focused on accuracy. And here in Japan, we have a very brutal university entrance exam situation. And so people in high school have very little opportunity to ever actually deal with fluency. And I'm going to go into fluency in a little bit here later on into some examples and details of what I mean by that. But I taught my students, as high school students especially, the difference between what accuracy and fluency was, and that you needed both, and that we were going to focus on a balance between the two. Okay, the next slide is brought to you, sponsored by Patrick. And it's a lovely road as well, isn't it? This has kind of become my second main point after a balanced approach, is that you need to connect with the students, or at least I need to connect with the students. I've never been able to teach people that I haven't been able to connect with. I've been a downright lousy teacher when I've had a problem connecting with the class. I remember one of my first years, there was a student, and I have no idea what her name was. I remember her chin, because she kind of sat there with her chin stuck out, looking at me like, is that all you have to offer? Is that the best you can do? and probably I wasn't doing very well. It was in my first year, and yet she threw me off so completely. I was not able to really connect. I was never able to be myself, and never able to connect with that class. I had a very palpable experience last year that I have to teach my university students the TOEFL IBT. That's all I teach now, is the TOEFL IBT in preparation for them to study abroad. And it's a lot for them to wrap their heads around. So I used to do an introduction in the first class, and then from the second class on, I would go right into teaching, what's the test, what skills are needed, what techniques are needed, goals to set. And in Japan, we have Golden Week, which is at the end of April. At the end of April, we have 3 days to 5 days off, and then that's sort of, everybody works their butts off getting through April, and then you have a nice break at the beginning of May, and then you come back. Well, they all came back and completely forgot everything about what the TOEFL IBT test was, completely. And it wasn't just a class, it was 8 classes that I had, and they had all forgotten it. So I thought, well, that's pretty much, I'm wasting a whole month in trying to force them into studying for this test, and we haven't actually connected yet. So for the past, I'm sorry, that was 2 years ago. For the past 2 years, I've spent the entire month of April getting to know, and that's having them for 90 minutes a week, once a week. And we're not just sitting there playing cards or chatting, I'm getting their language history. They're telling me or writing me their complete language history, from the time they remember learning Japanese or English until now. We do a full set of interviews, interviewing each other on their study skills. Where do they study? When do they study? How do they study? What kind of system do they build for their highlighters and their books and their pens? And what do they do with their cell phone when they're studying? Some of them, which I found out, some of them, put it under their pillow so they can't touch it. And some of them have to check their text messages every 10 seconds while they're studying. So I've learned a lot. And anything good that I learn from them interviewing, I certainly pass on to everybody else. We talk about learner autonomy. I give them links to TV shows that they can access online for free. I give them listening sites I give them all kinds of access to things once they've identified what's their strong point among reading, writing, listening, and speaking. What's their weak point? And through all of that, I think they get the sense that I care about them, and that I'm getting to know them. We're laughing, we're relaxing. I tell them that their homework, of course they have homework every class, but beyond that, their homework is to make as many friends as possible, to make as many connections as possible in that first month, because that's the support network that they're going to need when hell begins in May and we get right down to the nitty-gritty of the test. So I can't overemphasize how much that connecting is important. Yes, thank you, Valentina. Hearing how people study always throws up amazing differences in discussions. Yeah, and we have jukus. A juku is a cram school at night here in Japan, and we have a big difference between students who go to these cram schools and the teachers do nothing but teach the subject that they're doing. They really become experts. The high school teachers are playing the role of surrogate parent, club manager, psychologist, counselor, enforcer. The high school teachers are totally run rag here in Japan. And unfortunately, in my opinion, sometimes the subject that they're teaching ends up being the 12th or 13th thing on their list rather than being just the first thing that they have to worry about. At these cram schools, we have these, I call them specialists. And a lot of students who go to the cram schools get much better study skills. You can look at the pages in their notebooks, and they're actually organized. There's a system. The vocabulary all go in the same place. They underline things in different colors or for different reasons. Yeah. So go on to the next one, and expect. And that would be, I guess, the third thing, is that I really try to make my expectations of the students clear and somewhat negotiated our expectations of each other. I confess that some of you, I think, would say that you're better at teaching lower level students. Some of you would profess to be better at teaching higher level students. In Japan, most of my friends say that they like teaching the higher level students. They can communicate more, they can exchange deeper ideas, but I guess I'm the opposite. I've always had more satisfaction in seeing the lowest of the low students make some initial progress. And so I still struggle. This is my long roundabout way of saying I struggle at the top ends. My best classes, I have a hard time finding out if I'm pushing them hard enough and where to set the bar. I would love to hear if anybody has any comments about where they fit on that climb of feeling better teaching the lower level students, or any particular young learners or adults, or I'm definitely difficult teaching lower levels, but for me, Haifa, the teaching lower levels has just for some reason been easier in my case, but that's all case by case, I guess. Different teachers having different focuses. We got multiple people typing, but I'm going to move on here. So I guess the theory of learning, again, if I would just say the balanced approach, making connections and having expectations for the students, are three very clear things I always think about when I'm thinking about how to help students learn. And then the next part was my theory of practice, and I'm going to move into that, and we say in Japanese, ikinari. Ikinari, all of a sudden, and I'm going to drop all three of these on you at once. This is my, I guess, the beginnings of my theory of practice. Is I have this little test, and if I'm taking an activity into the classroom, it better be interesting. And I guess interesting is however you define it, but it has to be interesting. It has to have some reading value. It could be interesting because it's teaching you a skill that's really going to help you on the test that you have to take next week. It doesn't have to be interesting in terms of a ghost story, but it has to be interesting. It has to be doable or feasible. If it's not doable, then it's going to demotivate my students and not motivate them, and therefore it must be empowering. Thank you. Hello, Azel. Lower levels are most satisfying to teach as the progress is more noticeable. Yes, that's what I think as well. Haifa. Motivate, raise learners' curiosity, challenge them. Games here. Yeah, games are wonderful. So these are the three things that if I look at an activity and it doesn't pass these three tests, then I toss it out, look for something else to do. Or if I find I've tried something and I thought it was interesting, doable, and empowering, but it turns out it wasn't, then I get rid of it for the next time. In my own delivery of my lessons and in my expectations of my students, I try to be clear. I want them to be clear. I display my confidence, and I want them to become confident with whatever level of language that they can process at that time. And I also want to nurture a sense of cooperation in the classroom. So those would be 45 minutes on the first section of the whole talk, which was defining my beliefs. And that didn't happen in a day. It happened over a couple of years, actually. And so I just want to, the next two parts will have no problem finishing up in the next 15 minutes, but the next section is called Collaborating Online as Professional Development. So I started actually in 2006. I started a master's through the University of Birmingham, a distance program, and a very excellent distance program. And I started the first module by myself, and I was, in 2 weeks, had driven my wife and the teacher across from me, the only other native teacher in my school. I drove them both crazy by talking about all this stuff I was reading. So I realized I had to do something because even talking to myself didn't work. So I was reading so much for this master's course, I decided to start a Skype group, a Skype study group, and Skype was just getting off the ground at that point. And I sent emails around a number of times and finally got 5 altogether. And it changed my teaching life completely, because every Monday night for an hour, which was always an hour and a half, became a chance to talk about things we were reading. And these days, there's no excuse. There's just no excuse anymore that you don't have the time or you don't have the people near you at work, because we have this online community. I started out with 5 people on Skype, and I have over 400 now between students and teachers around the world that we've been in contact at least once over the past, since 2006, the past 7 years. So the online community is just absolutely there. As Barb said, and as other people typed, it's just getting over the first step. Again, preaching to the choir, because you are all here. Yes, Haifa, you can join. It just means I'm starting a new one, a new Skype study group. That last one finished because our MA, our master's program finished, but I'm starting a new one because I found that I'm dying to talk to people about. And that's just a great way to start, is get a book. And if you contact me, either through Twitter or through my Gmail, I've been able to separate the easy books to read and the very theoretical, difficult books to read. I have many suggestions for very easy books to read that you just need to get a group of people who can talk together, either on Skype or on Google Hangouts, possibly even Facebook has one now. How to contact, yeah, just at the very end here, I'll just, it has my email. I'll just type it in for you now. There you go. Feel free to contact me. So anyway, I got into it and it changed my life. The opportunity to not only read something, but then to talk about it, to have to answer questions about it, to defend your thinking about it, to connect it to your classroom, to your students. That's what we're doing. And all of this is leading up to, that's what ITDI became. We built a community where you could do all of those things. And you can do them free in the social forum, or you can buy a lesson and do them with a bunch of people who are doing the exact same lesson. For example, error correction. Everybody in the world, every teacher in the world talk about error correction and techniques and ways and successes and failures. Well, we have a lesson, we have 5 lessons on it, 2 of them that are up now, that you can go in, take the lesson, and be in a community to talk to teachers about. So many, many chances to do that. What I quickly realized, as it was said in the introduction, anything I can do, we can do better. And it took a little while, because I had the same kind of ego, thinking that I was right more often than I was wrong. But I quickly learned that if you surround yourself with smart people and they all agree, then probably I just said, okay, I'm right, but they are righter than I am. And so that once I started letting go of some of my thoughts or beliefs, and when hearing, again, really smart people tell me theirs, it's a great learning opportunity. Another, so I've just been known to say this, anything I can do, we can do better. Another one I've been repeated is this: collaboration creates just the right amount of tension. Tension is like stress or pressure. Collaboration creates just the right amount of tension. I make lists every day, like many teachers do, and if I don't get through all of my list, well, that's okay. I forgive myself and say I'll try again tomorrow. But if I make a promise to Valentina or Haifa or Nadia or somebody, or Anne here in this group, and if I promise you I'm going to meet you at such and such a time, and I'm going to have written or read something by then I do my darndest to do it, because I don't want to look bad. And so having that kind of collaborative team, yeah, wouldn't want to let Barbara down. Barbara has become like a sister, actually. Maybe I let her down more than I should. But this whole idea of using collaboration to spur you on to actually, you find that you get more things done. By collaborating in different circles, my lists are long, but when I don't have that to do, then my list is very short, and maybe I only get 2 out of 4 things done, but by collaborating I get 7 out of 10 things done. So there you go. And I've learned so many things. The good things I've learned, for example, that so many ways to become inspired and motivated. As Patrick just mentioned, Barb inspires me, Chuck inspires me, the people in my little inner circle inspire me constantly, and they've become my best friends as well as collaborators on projects, and they've challenged me and they've called me when I'm wrong and told me, and so it's made the whole teaching experience a much deeper experience for me. But on the other side, and I'm sorry, I can go on and on, but I'm looking at the clock here. But occasionally, things go wrong in collaboration. Things don't work out the way you plan. Communication breaks down. It's happened once, I think, in the 6 or 7 years where I don't collaborate with somebody I started to collaborate with, and that's unfortunate. But you know, things happen. But it's by no means. It's been, I guess, 99%, at least 90% or more better. And you just try to learn something from the times when occasionally things don't go right. I'm going to just take a moment to look ahead. Yeah, not a chance. Not a chance. Yeah, I was actually worried today that this might go a little short. I might whiz through these too quickly, but I guess that's not likely to happen with me. I'm just going to flip here quickly in the last 5 minutes. Like a roller coaster. Being a teacher is like a roller coaster. There are many ups and downs. I had a couple of stories there. Creating with the team, the team I love, creating ITDI is a total roller coaster. I see Sykes here. Thank you, Syke. That's good. Let's carry on here. Being a teacher means an ongoing commitment to one's own learning, and that journey can be both meaningful and fun. And that's the other thing in my group, my collaborations online with Skype or with MASH collaboration with ITDI, is that we actually try to always have fun. We laugh, we carry on with each other, we tease each other, but yet we're doing meaningful work. We're working with people that have high standards, and that again, when we're always tired, but we're always ready to go. Oops, sorry, Patrick, your dog. Yeah. Yeah, I had a couple of stories about people who I'm not very thorough. I see the big picture, but I've surrounded myself with a couple of people, Theron and Philip and Greg, and in fact, most of my inner circle, Barb, Scott, are very, very thorough people, and that's really good. So surround yourself with people that have what you don't have. That's been the secret. Stretch things. You know, we're sitting around one night. Somebody said, "Ever write a book?" And we said, "No, I haven't written a chapter yet." So we ended up writing a chapter, and then we wrote a book. And the book's called "Innovating EFL Teaching in Asia." It's on Amazon, and it's selling more copies than we ever thought it would. But stretching yourself, daring to dream, thorough and fair, yeah. Dare yourself to dream, dare yourself to get in a community that will stretch you. If you're earnest, if you are, you're fair-minded, everything works out. And I didn't know that 7 or 8 years ago. I was teaching in a little cocoon by myself, afraid to tell people what I thought, afraid to be called wrong, afraid to be called an imposter, that I wasn't a real teacher, an education degree. I had a BA in English, but not a real teacher. So it took that very first step was the hardest one. And I have a little spiel about collaboration is the gift that keeps on giving. Again, just on and on and on. I'm going to wrap up here, but just to tell you, where to begin is just taking that first step. ELT chat. Marissa was on here the other day. ELT chat, I met a ton of wonderful people. Facebook, online communities, ITDI community, just a million places. And you just say hello, and I want to learn, I want to contribute, I want to be a better teacher. And so I'll stop there. And the last section was going to be finding my own niche. A lovely road, isn't it? And I actually forget where it is. It's somewhere in the Middle East. But I'll show you the slides. Become your own niche. Find your own area. My niche is actually these. Ryuchos, nama, namera kasa, yodomi no nai koto, pera pera. They all mean fluency in Japanese. 4 different ways to say fluency. Speaking fluency. I developed this definition with my students. Thinking and speaking at the same time in a relatively natural speed with not so many errors so the meaning can be clearly understood. We wrote one for reading, writing, and listening as well. Just a couple more. Accuracy and fluency has been the secret that I've learned, that it becomes a chance to build confidence. Context is everything. If you don't do what's needed to be done in your context, then you're going to run into trouble. Let's do it. Thank you. Come see us at ITDI Pro. Contact me at stevenherder@gmail.com. Like I said, I was like so many teachers out there that were just watching, that weren't putting themselves out there. Just take that first step, and I just can't tell you how fun it is every day to work with people like Chuck and Gareth and Baron and Philip and everybody in my circle. And thank you very, very much for spending an hour listening to me blab on about all of this, but it's very much what's waiting for anybody who takes that first step. Is there is a fascinating world of teaching out there. Thank you. Woof, woof. Oh, I'll stop there. Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen, for that talk, and thank you for sharing the benefit of all the experience you've had over the years. One thing I always find interesting with these kind of talks is, no matter what the context, what the country and the cultural background people are working in, how similar things can be. A lot of the things you mentioned are things that I think I've experienced as well, and I'm sure it's the same for a lot of our participants.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%.
Okay, so if there are any questions you'd like to ask Stephen before we wrap up this session, you can either type them in the chat box, or if you want to ask a question using the microphone, I can help you out with that.
Yes, thank you, everybody. I'm getting lots of thank yous there. I want to say thank you back for sitting, and I hope that we have a chance to connect either through ITDI or through one of the other places on the internet where teachers are meeting. It's been a real pleasure to talk with you. And those of you who typed a lot, Valentina, Patrick, Anne, thank you very much. Oh. What are you cooking, Valentina? It's dinner time here. I'm getting hungry. Oh, lunch, Italy, pasta. Yes. Great. I think we're finished, Dave.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Steve, for the session and for joining the conference. So I'd just like to remind everyone we now have an hour break. Starting in 1 hour's time will be concurrent sessions. You can get all the details from the program. I've just put there in the chat box. And thank you all for attending and for your comments and contributions during both of today's sessions. I'm now going to close the recording.